but very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Monday that 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico will go into effect on Tuesday.
On the tariffs, is there any room left for Canada and Mexico to make a deal before midnight?
No room left for Mexico or for Canada. No, the tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect tomorrow.
U.S. stocks plunged after Trump said there was no room left for a deal that would avert the tariffs by halting the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum on Monday told reporters, quote, "We maintained communication. We have made the agreements and the necessary coordination." But she said the decision to impose tariffs rested with Trump and said Mexico was ready with a plan B, C, and D.
Plan C, plan D.
Trump on Sunday lauded a decline in illegal border crossings last month in a post on Truth Social, claiming they were the lowest ever recorded. But Trump has cited insufficient progress in reducing fentanyl overdose deaths. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Sunday told reporters Canada should not be blamed for the amount of fentanyl in the U.S.
The facts establish very clearly that Canada is not an issue in terms of source of illegal fentanyl into the United States. We had about less than 1% when we first started talking about this many months ago. That number is significantly lower than that, even now.
Economists say that if Trump imposes 25% tariffs, which cover more than $900 billion worth of annual imports from Canada and Mexico, it would deal a serious setback to the highly integrated North American economy. They say tariffs would spark major increases in the prices of imports, such as aluminum and lumber from Canada, and fruits, vegetables, beer, and electronics from Mexico. But the largest sector by far to be affected by new tariffs would be autos and auto parts. Sheinbaum has said Trump's tariffs would cost 400,000 U.S. jobs and drive up prices for American consumers.
When a papal conclave elevated the Archbishop of Buenos Aires to the head of the Roman Catholic Church in 2013, the man who became Pope Francis would also become a world traveler. Francis would be the first pope to visit Myanmar, the United Arab Emirates, North Macedonia, Iraq, Bahrain, and Mongolia, clocking more than 45 international trips during his papacy. But he never once returned to visit his native Argentina. And now, with the 88-year-old in critical condition, battling pneumonia in both lungs, such a return seems unlikely to happen. Those close to Francis say he worried a visit would have stirred controversy between the political factions at home. Guillermo Marco was a spokesperson for the Pope when he was Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio in Buenos Aires. He said Francis would have loved to come if the timing were right.
Yes, he would have liked to, if he could have made a simple trip. Let's say where he came to visit the people he loves and, I don't know, celebrate some mass for the people. But he is fully aware there is a whole network of supporters and detractors who are fighting over him, from one side and the other.
While Francis has been pope, the first pontiff ever from a Latin American country, Argentina has been rocked by repeated economic crises and political volatility. The current government is led by right-wing populist President Javier Milei. Milei once called Francis the devil's representative on earth, though he has patched things up since coming into office. Many of Argentina's faithful would still have liked to welcome Francis home and remember him as Bergoglio, born in 1936 in Buenos Aires to Italian immigrants.
That the Pope has not come until now hurts me. It hurts me a little. But, well, I think that he has his reasons or his opinions, and maybe at some point he will change them.
I would have liked him to come. But I think the important thing is what he can do for the world, right? And that he has us in his heart, of course.
Rogelio Firter is a former ambassador to the Vatican. He said Francis never forgot where he was from.
El Papa Francisco es argentinísimo.
Pope Francis is very Argentine.
I have no doubt that everything Argentine and the homeland itself is something that has a privileged place in his head and his heart.
Privilegiado dentro de su cabeza y de su corazón.
But I also insist the Pope is the Pope.
Pero insisto también, el Papa es el Papa.
I honestly think that Francis has stopped being Argentine. He is transformed into the intermediary between God and the earth.
Y la tierra.
Y'all select the landing. We're on the moon.
Firefly Aerospace succeeded in its first attempt to land on the moon. It landed its uncrewed Blue Ghost spacecraft on Sunday to kick off a 2-week research mission. The craft is the size of a company car and carried 10 scientific payloads. Firefly became the second private firm to score a moon landing, though it declared itself the first company to make a fully successful soft landing. Texas-based Intuitive Machines made a lopsided touchdown last year with its Odysseus lander. 5 nations have made successful soft landings in the past. The US and China are both rushing to put their astronauts on the moon later this decade. Each has courted allies and given their private sectors a key role in spacecraft development. The US plans on sending its astronauts back to the moon in a series of crewed missions starting in 2 years. China is also making quick progress. It plans to land astronauts on the moon's surface by 2030.
Toy makers are gathered in New York for an industry trade fair. But while they show off their wares for the months ahead, the firms really have their eyes on Washington. With Donald Trump confirming tariffs on Chinese goods will now hit 20%, toy brands say that can only mean more expensive gifts in the future. Tim Kilpin is head of consumer products at industry giant Hasbro.
Over 60% of the toys that are sold in the United States are under $20 retail. And so one of the things we're really trying to do in the situation with tariffs is make sure that our toys stay affordable, but at a certain level the tariffs are going to drive consumer prices up. There's really no way around that. We're working hard to mitigate the impact of that. We're working with our vendors, we're working with our supply chain, but we really don't see any way that consumers aren't going to be affected by these tariffs.
Arch rival Mattel says it too is trying to figure out how to price goods for the fall season. The firm says it's also trying to reduce its dependence on China for manufacturing. Right now, Mattel sources about 40% of its toys in the country, but it's aiming to cut that significantly by 2027. Some in the industry also hope Trump might be open to an emotional appeal. Industry Association President Greg Ahern argues playthings should be left out of the trade wars.
What we would like is that we have a hard look at the categories overall, and that the toy industry, because of what we do for kids, particularly helping kids emotionally, mentally, physically, and so important to their childhood, that there would be a way to look at our industry, particularly the toy industry, and keep us out as an exclusion of any tariff policy.
There is no sign, so far, that Washington is set to heed that appeal. EV giant BYD said Tuesday it raised almost $5.6 billion in a share sale. That made it the biggest such listing in Hong Kong for 4 years. Now the Chinese firm plans to use the money to increase research and development spending and expand overseas. BYD has rapidly emerged as the country's biggest automaker, but over 90% of its 4 million sales last year were in its home market. There it accounted for more than a third of the total shipments of electric cars and plug-in hybrids. In February alone, it launched 21 new electrified vehicles in a bid to stay competitive at home. The firm is also ramping up hiring, with a goal to sell up to 6 million vehicles this year. That would put it roughly on par with General Motors. As part of the drive, it's ramping up export efforts, with Brazil currently its largest overseas market. Now the share sale reflects increasing optimism over the tech sector in China and Hong Kong. Sentiment has lifted following a high-level summit of top executives led by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Investors took that as a sign that the government planned to give more support to the tech sector. BYD shares were down over 6% by early afternoon Tuesday, broadly in line with the discount offered on the stock in the listing. Shares in major exporters were also under pressure following Donald Trump's confirmation that he was pressing ahead with new tariffs, including on Chinese goods.